Imagine an entire human battleship, hidden for centuries, suddenly emerging from the void to change the fate of the galaxy forever. Every empire, every fleet, every citizen frozen in fear as humanity returns stronger than ever. Don't miss a single moment of this epic story. Subscribe to my channel now. The Xerion Empire had ruled the galaxy for generations, but those long years of dominance had begun to crumble in ways no one expected. Their enemies had always feared them, their fleets had always won, and their rulers believed their power would last forever. Yet deep inside the Empire's heart, a silent storm was building, something the powerful leaders were not ready to face. They felt it in their bones, in their councils, and in the whispers of their people. The galaxy no longer looked at them with fear alone. It looked at them with curiosity and suspicion, and the Empire hated that more than any open rebellion. For years, the Empire had expanded through sheer force. They conquered planets, harvested resources, and kept entire civilizations under their iron control. No one dared to challenge them, and anyone who tried vanished without a trace. But recently, strange attacks had begun along their outer borders. Fleets that should have been unstoppable simply disappeared, leaving nothing but fragments of metal floating in silence. Some wanted to believe it was a technical malfunction. Others blamed rebels. But the truth felt far more unsettling. It felt like a shadow creeping closer every day, a shadow they did not understand. News of these disappearances spread quickly. Soldiers talked about them in secret, commanders argued in private chambers, and civilians whispered in fear as they watched the stars from their homes. The Empire tried to hide the truth, but fear is a difficult thing to contain. It travels through rumors, it grows in silence, and soon the entire empire felt its grip tightening. The feeling was not the usual fear of losing a simple battle. It was something different, something older, something colder. It felt like destiny changing course and pulling the empire toward a path it could not control. The emperor himself sensed the weight of something dark and unseen approaching. He had stood above the galaxy for decades, listening to reports of victories and conquests. But now every report carried uncertainty instead of strength. His generals spoke in half-truths, their voices wavering even when they tried to act brave. Sensors reported strange distortions, anomalies that followed no known pattern, and entire scouting missions vanished even when traveling in groups. It was as if the universe itself was attacking them, twisting space and swallowing their ships without leaving a trace. The Empire's pride turned into confusion, and confusion quickly turned into fear. They were a civilization built on strength, but strength meant nothing against an enemy they could not see. The commanders struggled to understand what was happening, poring over maps, star charts, and data streams, but the answers never came. Every time they tried to approach the mysteries, the unknown force struck again, and each attack grew more daring and more terrifying. It felt deliberate, as if someone was testing them, measuring their weaknesses, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike at their heart. For the first time in centuries, the Empire questioned its own survival. They had faced wars before. They had fought dangerous alien races. But this was different. This was silent, precise, and calculated, as if the enemy knew them better than they knew themselves. People across the Empire began preparing for the worst. Families stored supplies, soldiers trained harder, and political leaders argued endlessly about what to do, but none of them knew the truth. No one suspected what was truly lurking behind the disappearances. No one imagined that the force rising from the shadows was something that should have been impossible. The idea that an ancient enemy, long thought extinct, was returning never crossed their minds. The Empire tried to project strength by sending their most powerful armadas into the regions where the attacks had happened, hoping for a victory to restore confidence. But those fleets returned with nothing but confusion and fear. The space around them looked normal, the stars quiet, the paths clear. But the sensors felt wrong, like something had been there but vanished just before they arrived. The commanders could not explain it, and the soldiers could not understand it. All they knew was that whatever haunted the borders of their empire was waiting, watching, and preparing for something bigger. As the days passed, the empire felt the weight of the unknown pressing harder. The silence grew louder. The missing ships became too many to ignore, and the fear turned into panic. The empire was on the brink, not because of war, But because of a growing shadow that no one could define, they had no idea that this shadow was not a monster, not an alien threat, but a human creation, hidden for centuries and preparing to return to the galaxy in a way that would change everything. The Empire stood at the edge of a storm, and it did not even know its name yet. The Imperial High Council gathered inside the Grand Chamber, a room built to inspire confidence and remind everyone of the Empire's unshakable power. But on this day, nothing felt powerful. The air was heavy. Commanders stood stiff with worry, and even the Emperor's advisors looked older than usual. It was clear from the moment the meeting began that something was terribly wrong. The Empire was not used to fear, yet fear had entered the room before anyone spoke. The first commander stepped forward, his voice trembling even though he tried to sound firm. He reported that an entire fleet had been wiped out near the Outer Rim, not a single distress signal, not a single survivor. The council members exchanged uneasy looks. They tried to assume it was a rebel attack or a malfunction, but deep inside they knew this was different. Nothing in their long history had erased a full fleet so silently. The commander showed sensor data that flickered with strange distortions, like reality itself had bent for a moment. It made no sense, and that scared them the most. Another general spoke next, explaining that multiple scouting ships had vanished in the same region. They simply disappeared from the radar. One moment they were there, the next moment they were gone. No wreckage, no explosion, no clue. It was as if space had swallowed them whole. The council tried to analyze the data, but the readings were too strange to interpret. Gravity spikes, energy fluctuations, distortions that didn't match any known weapon or natural phenomenon. The council chamber grew quieter with every detail, as if every word stripped away a layer of their confidence. The Emperor listened silently, his expression serious. He had heard many threats over his lifetime, but this one felt different. This was not a predictable enemy, not a political rebellion, not a rival empire. This was something else, something that played by rules the Empire did not understand. The room grew even more tense when a senior strategist revealed that the fleet lost earlier that week had been led by one of the Empire's most feared admirals. If even he could not defend his ships, it meant the Empire was facing an enemy beyond anything they had prepared for. To calm the panic, one advisor suggested that maybe the reports were exaggerated or corrupted, but the council immediately rejected the idea. Too many ships had vanished, too many strange anomalies had been recorded, and too many soldiers had spoken about seeing distortions before their screens went black. The council realized they were dealing with a force that not only defeated them, but erased evidence of its presence. That level of precision terrified them more than brute strength ever could. The council then reviewed the last transmission received from a scout vessel, a blurry image filled with static and distortion. For a single second, a massive shadow appeared behind the ship before the transmission cut off. It was not clear enough to identify, but it was large, silent, and something none of their intelligence archives recognized. Some believed it was a new alien species. Others whispered that it might be a rogue machine or ancient technology awakened after centuries. But no one could agree on anything except one truth. The Empire was being hunted by something it did not understand. As the debate grew more heated, panic began to spread among the council members. Their voices rose, hands shook, and the chamber's rigid order slowly fell apart. They argued about deploying more fleets, about retreating from the border, about contacting allied systems. But every idea collapsed under the same problem. How could they fight something invisible, silent, and impossible to track? The fear inside the council chamber felt like a living thing, growing bigger with every passing moment. Some commanders begged the Emperor to declare a full military alert across the entire empire, but others warned that such a move would only create chaos among the citizens. The Emperor knew they could not hide the truth forever. People were already whispering, noticing missing patrols, noticing news broadcasts cut short. The Empire was slipping, and if they did nothing, everything they built over centuries would collapse. Finally, the Emperor stood and demanded silence. His voice echoed across the chamber, reminding them of the authority he still held. He ordered them to prepare for the worst and begin gathering every piece of information possible about the mysterious threat. But even as he spoke, Everyone in the room could see the fear behind his eyes. The Emperor was strong, but even he could not deny the reality before them. Something was coming for their empire. Something powerful. Something ancient. Something that had already begun dismantling their defenses piece by piece. The council ended with no real solution. Only fear disguised as strategy. As the leaders left the chamber, their faces pale and their steps heavy. One thing became clear to every person who walked out of that room. The Empire, once unstoppable and unshakable, was now trapped in the grip of panic. And the enemy causing that panic had not even revealed itself yet. The Empire's scouts moved carefully through the dark stretch of space where the strange anomalies had been detected. Their ships glided in silence, scanning every corner, every shadow, every flicker of light. The commanders on board tried to act calm, but inside, every crew member felt the tension tightening around them like an invisible rope. This was not an ordinary mission. They all knew that. They were entering a region where entire fleets had vanished without a trace. A region that felt cursed, dangerous, and alive in a way space should not be. The lead scout ship activated its long-range sensors, but the readings came back distorted. The machines beeped, screens flickered, and lines of data scrambled into nonsense. It was the same problem every other fleet had reported before disappearing. The universe around them felt wrong, like it was glitching, shifting, bending in unnatural ways. The engineers tried to stabilize the sensors, but the technology simply refused to behave. Something in that region was bending space itself, twisting the very fabric of reality in a way no one could understand. As the scouts traveled deeper into the anomaly zone, the darkness grew thicker. It wasn't the normal emptiness of space. It felt heavy, like something was pressing against the ships from all sides. Even the stars looked strange, as if their light was being bent or swallowed before it reached the scouts. The crew whispered among themselves, wondering if maybe the rumors were true, maybe some ancient cosmic creature was awakening, or maybe a new alien empire had created advanced weapons beyond anything known. But the truth was still far more terrifying, and none of them were prepared for it. Suddenly, one of the smaller scout vessels reported seeing a ripple in the void, like a wave passing through empty space. The ripple moved silently, gracefully, almost like it was alive. The crew stared at the monitors in shock. They had never witnessed anything like it. Before they could analyze the anomaly, another ripple appeared, then another. The ripples moved closer, surrounding the fleet like a silent storm approaching with slow, deliberate intent. The lead commander ordered all ships to maintain formation and continue scanning, but fear was already spreading across the crews. The ripples were not normal physical distortions. They looked like cracks forming in the darkness, thin fractures that glowed faintly for a second before fading again. Something was pushing through those cracks, something massive, ancient, and hidden. The scouts could feel the tension building with every passing second. The silence around them felt too perfect, too controlled, as if space was holding its breath. Without warning, the sensors across all scout ships went completely dead. The screens turned black. The radar shut down, and the communications cut out. For a moment, the only sound in the ships was the panicked breathing of the crew. They tried restarting the systems, but nothing responded. It was as if something had reached into their technology and simply turned it off with a single thought. The commanders shouted orders, trying to keep the crew calm, but their voices shook with fear. Something was out there, and it had finally revealed its presence. A low vibration passed through the lead scout ship, like a giant hand had brushed against its hull. The lights flickered, the engines stuttered, and the metal groaned under an unseen force. The crew clutched their seats, staring at the viewports, hoping to see what had touched them. But the void remained dark and silent. The feeling of being watched grew stronger, as if dozens of unseen eyes were studying them, judging them, deciding their fate. Then it happened. The anomaly expanded, tearing open like a wound in the darkness. A massive rift formed in front of the scouts, glowing with a cold, eerie light. The glow spread across space, stretching wider and wider until it swallowed half the sky. The scouts watched in helpless terror as the rift grew, bending reality around it, pulling the ships closer with a force they could not escape. It felt like gravity had reversed, dragging everything toward the crack in space. One of the scout ships tried to break free, engaging full engines, but the force was too strong. The ship twisted, its hull bending, stretching, and collapsing into the rift without a sound. Another ship followed, then another. All of them were pulled into the glowing tier, disappearing completely. Their lights vanished, their signals extinguished, their existence erased from the universe as if they had never been there at all. The final moments of the last scout ship were filled with chaos, alarms blaring, metal groaning, crew members shouting in fear, but no one outside would ever hear those cries. The entire scout fleet was swallowed by the anomaly within seconds, leaving nothing behind but silence. No wreckage, no debris, no clue. It was as if space itself had devoured them whole. When the anomaly closed again, the void returned to stillness, calm and empty. But the Empire would soon learn the truth. Something had awakened within that darkness, and it was only the beginning. Across the galaxy, millions of people were living their ordinary lives when the first emergency broadcast appeared on their screens. At first, citizens thought it was another government announcement or a routine warning. But then the image changed, and every viewer felt their heart freeze. The broadcast showed live footage from a deep space telescope, and something was happening in the far reaches of the void, something no one had ever seen before. The stars in one small region of space looked distorted, as if they were being stretched and pulled by an invisible force. The darkness around them twisted, rippled, and bent, creating shapes that did not belong in the natural universe. Scientists watching from research stations across different planets leaned forward in shock. They had spent their lives studying the laws of physics. Yet the event unfolding live defied every rule they knew. The energy readings were off the charts. Gravitational waves were shaking the sensors, and the space-time map showed a massive tear forming where no tear should exist. People watching from their homes held their breath as the darkness continued to twist. The image looked like the universe was trying to open a giant doorway in the middle of empty space. The broadcast grew brighter as the tier expanded, glowing with cold, white light. It wasn't warm or comforting. It felt sharp, unnatural, even dangerous. Civilians could feel that something big was coming, even though they had no idea what it was. Children hid behind their parents. Adults stood frozen, and news anchors struggled to find words. Some anchors whispered on air, wondering if this was a natural cosmic event, a new star forming, or a supernova preparing to explode. But the scientists watching knew instantly that this was none of those things. This was deliberate, precise, and controlled, like someone was forcing reality to open. Reporters tried to contact the Imperial Council for answers, but no official response came. The silence only made the fear grow worse. People began posting the footage on social networks, zooming in, slowing it down, analyzing every movement of the glowing rift. The video spread like wildfire, reaching every corner of the Empire within minutes. Panic grew as rumors started circulating. Some claimed it was the return of an ancient alien race. Others said it was a secret weapon created by rebel forces. A few whispered something even scarier, that it was the same force that had been destroying entire fleets without a trace. On a mining colony near the border, workers stopped all operations and crowded around screens, staring at the massive tier in space. The older workers, who had lived through several wars, felt an uneasy chill run through their bodies. This was not the kind of threat a simple fleet or army could handle. This was something far beyond the Empire's understanding. People on the colony began calling their families, telling them to stay home, to prepare, to pray, even though they did not know what they were preparing for. As the rift expanded, it became so bright that the entire broadcast screen turned white for a moment. A loud static sound filled every communication channel. The noise was sharp and overwhelming, causing people to cover their ears. Then, as suddenly as it started, the noise stopped, leaving a dead, cold silence. When the cameras adjusted, the universe looked different. The rift had grown massive, stretching across a region large enough to swallow moons. The edges of the tier pulsed like a beating heart, sending waves of energy across the void. Every scientist watching felt a terrifying realization. This was not the beginning of a cosmic event. This was the arrival of something that was trying to enter their universe, something with unimaginable power. The glowing tier continued to widen until finally a dark outline appeared inside it. The shape was enormous, larger than any ship ever seen before. At first, it was only a shadow, barely visible through the glowing light, but slowly, gradually, it began to move forward, pushing through the tier like a giant emerging from behind a curtain. People gasped. Screens flickered, and transmissions slowed as the figure came into clarity. It was no meteor, no alien creature, no strange cosmic storm. It was a warship, a massive battleship unlike anything the Empire possessed. Its shape was sharp, cold, and intimidating, armored with layers of unknown metal that seemed to absorb the light around it. The ship's silhouette grew clearer by the second, revealing size and power on a scale no one had imagined possible. All across the Empire, fear spread like fire. The sight of such a ship emerging from a tier in reality itself made one thing very clear. This was not a natural event. This was an arrival. Something had crossed the void, something hidden, something ancient. And every person watching felt the same chilling truth. The galaxy they knew was about to change forever. The massive warship pushed farther out of the glowing tier, its shadow stretching across the void like a giant rising from a long sleep. For a moment, the entire galaxy held its breath. Every civilian, every scientist, every soldier watching the broadcast felt the same cold shiver run through them. They had never seen anything like this vessel before. The Empire had built countless ships, some large enough to carry armies. But this one made even the strongest Imperial dreadnought look small and harmless. The ship moved slowly, with a sense of purpose, as if it knew exactly where it was going and exactly why it had arrived. As the rift closed behind it, the glow faded, leaving the warship floating in open space. The cameras zoomed in, trying to capture every detail. What they saw only increased the fear spreading across the galaxy. The hull was made of a dark, matte metal that reflected almost no light, giving it a ghost-like appearance. Long armored plates covered its sides, seamless and smooth like they were forged from a single piece of an unknown alloy. Strange patterns lined its surface, faint lines and symbols that pulsed gently as if alive. The sight of this alien metal alone was frightening, but the ship's size was even more terrifying. It was thousands of meters long, dwarfing anything the Empire had ever engineered. The broadcast continued to zoom closer until finally the cameras captured something that froze every viewer where they stood. On the side of the warship, hidden between massive armored plates, were markings, not alien symbols, not strange shapes, but letters. Simple, ancient, familiar letters. The viewers blinked, thinking their eyes were deceiving them, but the markings were clear, sharp, and unmistakable. Painted in bold, weathered strokes were the English words, UAS Nemesis. For a moment, the galaxy fell silent. Humanity had disappeared from the stars centuries ago. Every record, every archive stated that humans were gone, wiped out in a war so devastating that even their ruins had been lost to time. And yet here, in the middle of space, stood a battleship with human markings, a vessel so advanced that even the greatest empire could not understand it. The scientists watching the broadcast felt their hands go cold as the truth sank in. This was no imposter, no trick, no fake signal. This was real. This was human technology, refined over centuries of isolation, rebuilt in secret far from the eyes of the galaxy. People across the Empire began shouting, crying, whispering. Some were terrified, others were confused. A few felt a strange spark of hope. The idea that humanity had survived, adapted, and returned was unbelievable. Yet the proof was right before them. The analysts tried to explain the situation live on air, but their voices shook with fear and disbelief. The Empire had never feared humans before, because humans had disappeared long before the Empire rose to power. But now, the sudden return of a hidden human battleship sent waves of terror through every level of society. As the Nemesis floated silently in space, it emitted no weapons fire, no signals, no threats. It simply existed, calm and steady. But its presence alone felt like a declaration. The Empire's military scrambled to react. Warships across nearby systems were ordered to stand by. Soldiers were rushed to battle stations, and commanders argued about whether to open communication or prepare for war. But deep inside, every leader knew one terrifying truth. If this ship had emerged from the anomaly that destroyed entire fleets, then the Empire stood no chance against it in open battle. This warship could have wiped out the scouts, the fleets, and everything else they had sent without even breaking a sweat. The Nemesis glided forward a few meters, slow and controlled, as if testing the space around it. The pulsing lights across its hull brightened, creating patterns that looked almost organic. Some viewers wondered if the ship was alive. Others speculated that it was powered by technology far beyond anything the Empire had access to. The longer the ship remained silent, the more terrifying it felt. A predator that does not roar is far more frightening than one that does, because silence means confidence, and the Nemesis radiated confidence in every motion. Across cities, people rushed out of buildings to look at public screens, watching the ship replayed in endless loops. Every new angle, every new detail added to the fear. The old stories of humanity returned to public memory. Stories of a species that was once small but incredibly dangerous. Humans had been known for their creativity, stubbornness, and power to adapt faster than any other race. They had fought the impossible and survived, even when their enemies believed them extinct. And now, their ship had emerged from a rift in space like a ghost returning from the dead. The Empire's leaders knew that whatever came next would change the galaxy forever. The Nemesis had not fired a single shot, yet its arrival alone had shattered the Empire's sense of control. This was not a threat, not yet, but it was a warning. The return of humanity was real, and the galaxy was unprepared. The warship floated silently, glowing with mysterious energy, waiting for its moment, ready to reveal why it had come. And every living being in the Empire felt the same chilling truth settle in their hearts. The galaxy had awakened to something it thought was long gone. Humanity was back, and nothing would ever be the same again. The Zerion Empire froze as the full size of the Human Battleship became visible. The vast vessel hovered silently in space, massive beyond imagination, its dark hull absorbing the light of nearby stars. The Empire had believed humanity extinct for centuries, a story of a long-lost race erased from the records, and yet here it was, alive, thriving, and more powerful than any fleet the Empire had ever built. The shock was instantaneous, spreading from the military command centers to the streets of every planet under their control. Citizens stared at their screens, some with awe, most with terror, unable to believe what they were seeing. The Empire's fleets, once proud and unchallenged, now seemed fragile and insignificant in comparison. Inside the council chambers of the Imperial capital, commanders struggled to process what was happening. The Emperor and his advisors had faced countless threats in their history, but none had left them feeling so powerless. The sensors that once confidently scanned the void now returned data that made no sense. Readings from the Nemesis defied physics, energy outputs were off the charts, and gravitational distortions bent space around the ship in ways the Empire had never recorded. Every analysis led to the same terrifying conclusion. This was not an alien invasion, not a random anomaly, not a natural phenomenon. This was humanity, returning from the shadows, and the Empire had no idea what it was capable of. Soldiers and fleet commanders across the Empire felt a mix of disbelief and fear. Their strongest ships seemed like toys compared to the colossal Human Battleship. Every tactic they had prepared for years suddenly felt outdated, useless, inadequate. Communication channels buzzed with panic as officers tried to coordinate responses. But even the best plans felt meaningless. The Nemesis didn't need to fire a shot to control the situation. Its presence alone was a declaration of power, a reminder that the Empire's arrogance and overconfidence had blinded them to the resilience of a species they thought gone forever. Fear rippled through the ranks like a wave, spreading from high-ranking officers to every crew member on every ship, paralyzing initiative and courage alike. Civilians across human-colonized systems watched in shock as images of the Nemesis were broadcasted endlessly. Analysts and historians began recounting old human wars, stories of ingenuity and resistance that had been dismissed as legends. The people remembered that humanity had survived impossible odds in the past, innovating faster and striking smarter than any enemy could predict. Those same traits seemed alive again in this single vessel. Every person watching realized that the humans who had returned were not the same as the humans who had disappeared. They were stronger, wiser, and prepared to face threats that the Empire could not even comprehend. Imperial scientists struggled to explain the energy signatures coming from the Nemesis. Their calculations failed repeatedly, their models collapsed, and for the first time, even the most confident researchers admitted they had no idea how the ship operated. It was as if the Nemesis used technology that had been hidden for centuries, far beyond the reach of anyone in the galaxy. Some suggested it might be powered by artificial intelligence of extraordinary intelligence. Others guessed it was using energy sources drawn directly from the fabric of space itself. Whatever the truth, one thing was undeniable. The humans had built something unstoppable, and the Empire's fleets were not ready to confront it. Not in any known form of battle. The Emperor convened another emergency council, this time with more urgency than ever before. Commanders laid out their options, each more desperate than the last. They could attempt to attack, but their weapons would likely fail. They could retreat, but they would look weak and invite further aggression. They could try to communicate, but who could speak to a species that had disappeared from history? The room was heavy with tension, uncertainty, and the realization that centuries of power and control were at risk. Fear had replaced confidence, and doubt had replaced authority. The Empire was truly on edge, paralyzed by the unexpected return of humans. Finally, a broadcast came directly from the Nemesis, cutting across every Imperial channel simultaneously. The voice was calm, clear, and commanding, yet it carried an unmistakable weight, demanding attention. Every screen in the Empire's territory displayed a human officer standing aboard the bridge of the massive ship. His eyes were steady, his expression resolute, and his message was simple yet shocking. The humans had been hidden for centuries, observing, learning, preparing, and now they had returned not for conquest, but to warn the Empire of a threat greater than anything the galaxy had faced before. The words resonated with authority, leaving no doubt that humanity had evolved, adapted, and was ready to take its place once more among the stars. The Empire could only listen, frozen in terror and awe, realizing that the humans who had been written out of history had not only survived, but had become a force that could reshape the galaxy. They had emerged from the void with precision, power, and purpose. And in that moment, every mind in the Council and beyond understood a chilling truth. Humanity had returned, and the age of Empire dominance was about to face a challenge unlike anything it had ever imagined. The human commander's voice echoed across every screen in the galaxy, calm yet filled with undeniable authority. His image stood tall on the bridge of the Nemesis, the massive battleship behind him glowing softly with energy. Every person watching, from soldiers in the Empire's fleets to civilians on distant colonies, felt the weight of his presence. The Zerion Empire had spent centuries believing humanity was extinct, wiped out in a war that had left only legends behind. And now, after all this time, humans were not only alive, they were here in full force, prepared and organized in a way that no one could have imagined. He spoke clearly, explaining the truth that had been hidden for generations. Humanity had survived, they had adapted, and they had grown stronger in secret. The enemy that had destroyed fleets along the Empire's borders was not just an anomaly, it was a sign of a far greater threat approaching the galaxy. One that could annihilate civilizations indiscriminately. The humans had observed quietly for centuries, preparing technology, refining ships, and studying the patterns of the universe, waiting for the right moment to step forward. Their survival had depended on patience, secrecy, and a relentless determination to protect themselves until the time was right. The commander continued, emphasizing that the Nemesis and its fleet were not coming to conquer or to destroy the Zerion Empire. Rather, they were returning to warn, to demonstrate power, so no one would underestimate humanity again. The message was clear. The humans had evolved far beyond the Empire's understanding, and their warnings should not be ignored. Every fleet commander listening felt a chill run down their spine, realizing that the humans had been planning their return with precision unmatched in the galaxy. Every detail of this ship, every strategic maneuver, every technological advance had been designed to prepare the galaxy for what was coming. Across planets and colonies, civilians and soldiers alike watched in awe as the commander explained how humanity had survived centuries of isolation. The humans had settled hidden star systems, built massive facilities for research and shipbuilding, and created networks of intelligence to monitor threats to the galaxy. They had been patient, choosing not to engage prematurely, knowing that revealing themselves too soon would risk destruction. But now the time had come. The humans had calculated that the current threat was approaching too fast for anyone else to stop, and intervention required their return. The Empire's leaders were silent, stunned into inaction by the sheer audacity of the human return. Their fleets were powerful, but compared to the Nemesis, they seemed fragile, outdated, and exposed. Every strategy they had relied on for centuries suddenly felt meaningless. The humans had not only survived extinction, but had become a force that could rewrite the rules of the galaxy. The commander's words were precise, leaving no doubt about their capabilities, but also measured, showing restraint. It was a statement of power wrapped in diplomacy, a clear signal that humanity would act decisively if needed. As he spoke, the Nemesis shifted slightly, revealing more of its vast structure to the sensors monitoring it. Weapon systems glimmered along the hull, engines pulsed with energy, and the sheer scale of the ship became undeniable. The visual alone reinforced the message that the humans were no longer a forgotten race, but a dominant force with knowledge and technology far surpassing anything the Empire had ever encountered. Across the galaxy, people whispered among themselves, some in fear, some in disbelief, others with a strange sense of relief that humans had survived and returned. The mixture of emotions was overwhelming, but one feeling united everyone: respect for a species that had once been written out of history, but had returned stronger than anyone could imagine. The commander's final words were a warning and a promise. Humanity had returned to ensure the galaxy survived the approaching threat. They would not be pushed aside, underestimated, or ignored. The Empire and all civilizations needed to prepare, to pay attention, and to take humanity seriously. His words left an unmistakable impression. This was not just a single ship, not just a battle fleet, but the beginning of humanity's new presence in the galaxy. A presence that demanded recognition, cooperation, and careful consideration from every leader, every commander, and every citizen across the stars. By the time the broadcast ended, the Empire was frozen, not just with fear, but with the sudden awareness that the universe had changed forever. The humans who had been thought extinct were now a reality, their ships, their knowledge, and their power undeniable. And every being watching understood the same truth. Humanity had returned from the shadows, not for conquest, but to warn and protect, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The Empire stood in stunned silence as the human commander finished speaking. Every corner of the galaxy had witnessed the Nemesis, its massive hull glowing with power, and the human voice explaining centuries of secrecy and preparation. Imperial fleets hovered in space, unable to move, as if the presence of the humans had frozen them in place. Leaders on countless worlds stared at the screens, realizing that the centuries of confidence and dominance were suddenly fragile. Humanity had returned not as a myth, not as a legend, but as a force that could no longer be ignored. Their survival, their technology, and their knowledge were now undeniable, and the Empire understood that the balance of power had shifted in an instant. Soldiers across the Empire tightened their grips on their weapons, but fear lingered in their hearts. They had faced alien invasions, internal rebellions, and natural disasters, but none had caused the same paralyzing dread. The Nemesis was not just a ship. It was a statement, a reminder that humans had survived the impossible and now had the ability to act on a scale no one else could comprehend. The silence that followed the broadcast was heavy, filled with tension, anticipation, and the uneasy understanding that this encounter was only the beginning. Humanity had returned, and they had returned with purpose. The human commander continued speaking. Though now the message was directed at the Empire's leadership specifically, he warned of a looming threat, something approaching the galaxy that could destroy everything if left unchecked. The humans had been preparing quietly for centuries, building fleets, refining technology, and observing the galaxy's every corner, waiting for the moment when intervention was necessary. Now that moment had arrived, and the Nemesis was only the first sign of humanity's preparedness. Their message was clear: unite, pay attention, and recognize that the humans had returned not for revenge or conquest, but to protect the galaxy from the devastation that was coming. Imperial scientists scrambled to analyze the Nemesis, but every reading left them more confused and afraid. Energy outputs exceeded anything previously recorded. The ship's defenses seemed impenetrable, and its weapon systems operated in ways that defied known physics. Every calculation made by the Empire's engineers was thrown into question. The humans had created technology that had been hidden for centuries, and it had now emerged fully operational and ready to respond to any threat. The Empire realized that their fleets, once symbols of invincibility, were now outclassed and vulnerable, and even the most experienced admirals understood that conventional tactics would be useless against such power. Civilians across the galaxy watched in awe and disbelief. Many could not comprehend how humans could have survived, much less developed such advanced technology in secret. Stories of human resilience and ingenuity, once dismissed as myths or legends, suddenly made sense. The galaxy realized that humans had evolved, learning from centuries of isolation and preparation. They had turned survival into mastery. And now they had returned to make sure the galaxy did not suffer the same fate as humanity's own near extinction. The realization was humbling, as even the most powerful civilizations had to acknowledge a force far greater than anything they had imagined. The Emperor and his council remained frozen in deliberation, weighing their options and realizing that every decision carried enormous risk. Attack, retreat, negotiation, none seemed sufficient. The humans had come prepared for all outcomes. Their message was not only a warning, but a challenge. The galaxy must act wisely or face consequences beyond comprehension. The Empire understood that it had been observing humans for centuries from a place of ignorance, believing them extinct. Yet the humans had been watching, waiting, and preparing for this exact moment. As the broadcast ended, the Nemesis and its crew did not leave. They remained in space, a silent sentinel and a reminder of humanity's power and determination. The Empire knew that the humans would not act recklessly, but their patience had limits. The Nemesis had emerged to demonstrate strength, warn of a larger threat, and make sure the galaxy took notice. Every civilization that watched understood the same truth. Humanity had returned, not to be dominated, not to be ignored, but to protect, to intervene, and to shape the future of the galaxy in ways no one could have anticipated. In that moment, the Empire and every living being watching realized that nothing would ever be the same again. Centuries of dominance, fear, and control had been shattered by the return of a species long thought extinct. The Nemesis floated silently, powerful, precise, and prepared. Its presence was a promise and a warning. The humans had returned from the shadows, and their arrival signaled the beginning of a new era. An era where the galaxy would have to adapt to the fact that humanity was alive, advanced, and ready to take its place once more among the stars. And every mind across the Empire knew that the galaxy had entered a new reality, one shaped by humans and the storm that was yet to come.